general.
Like, oh, I got a family member that got sick. I have a family member in the hospital. I had a death in my family. Oh,
just life.
Car
life
accident,
happens.
yeah.
And we don't want to give up on that borrower because I truly believe in home ownership. I believe it to my core, and I want people to get in homes.
Dream Team.
Dream Team.
Dream Team Podcast.
Dream Team Podcast, Episode 2. Hey guys, thanks for coming. I'm Tyler Zesh. I'm here with our hosts, Zach Allen and Alejo Moreno. This episode, we're going to discuss the financial side of real estate and what to expect when going through the process of financing and owning a home. Today, we've got a special guest with us, Hunter Zier, a local lending agent here in Spokane, Washington. Hunter, how's it going, man?
Doing awesome, man. Good to see you guys.
Good.
Good to
It's
hang out with you.
First guest on the pod.
Yes.
Let's
Anyways,
go.
yeah, so first and foremost, thank you for joining and being on here today. It's amazing, and it's an honor to have you in our presence. So
Appreciate being here.
go ahead and just start off with giving everybody some insight to your background on the financing side and kind of how you got into the realm of real estate and how you partnered up with Dream Team.
Yeah. So it goes back to college. Did college down in Oklahoma, graduated in 2017, and didn't really know what I wanted to do. And
What were you thinking about? What were your options? What were your options at that time?
so this is back in 2017. I was working in pharmaceutical sales in college, and then I did some software sales.
So you were selling drugs?
Yeah, I was the middle. I was the middleman.
Okay.
Drug dealer turned loan officer.
Yeah, whatever.
So pharmaceuticals,
They match, you know.
they go hand in hand.
Hey, I passed my background check.
That's all that matters.
that's all that matters.
Means you never got caught.
Hey, so did Walter White, bro. So it's all good.
True. So yeah, and I was thinking about staying down there because both companies I worked for were awesome. And
Were you making good money then, or?
well, I mean, it was just part time, but I had two good job offers. But I mean,
Was it a six-figure job opportunity that you turned down, or
I mean, eventually, but it wasn't out the gate. So
what didn't you like about it? Did you want to be like full time, or?
well, so I had full time job
I
offers.
mean, like more entrepreneurial, or?
I did, yeah. I mean, they were both full-time after our graduation, which they offered me 2 full-time positions. I mean, they were both really good companies. I love Spokane and I always wanted to come back here. But my problem was, like, when you go to college, you develop your connections wherever you go to school. Because all my connections were from high school and all I was doing was landscaping. So I didn't have any professional, connections and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So all my connections were down there, which were great, but I didn't really have anything in Spokane. And so I was talking with my family and my dad, and I was like, hey, I really want to come back to Spokane, but I didn't, have any connections back here. And so I started looking into some stuff, and my dad's known my owners for a long time, the Windhorsts, and he's known them for about 20 years. And he was like, hey, you should go talk to Tim. He might have some loan officer positions opening up. So did some job shadowing with them, went to lunch, loved their family, really, really good people. And just did some job shadowing with some guys in the office. And I was like, man, this seems really hard and really difficult. I want to do it.
Amazing.
So yeah, I'm always up for the challenge. I've always been, going against the grain and not taking the easy route. So I was like, this is something I want to give a shot at, even if it's scary. Cause it was a decent sized move. I mean, moving back 2,000 miles away, I got family here, but I went straight to living on my own. And, going into a 100% commission role out of college, I mean, I was already used to living broke, but
what age was that at?
22.
22. Okay. So
Yep.
It sounds like it was your father that kind of not necessarily encouraged you getting into the financing side, but he said there may be some opportunity here.
Right.
And dished you in that direction to some friends he had.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And from there, how long did it take you before you felt like you had it pretty well down packed and felt like this is what I do?
I still don't have that. No.
Okay.
I'd say probably about 12 months in, I started feeling like, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing. I'm starting to get a good pipeline built, good connections. So I'd say about a year in when I was like, this is definitely something I want to do the rest of my life.
And for those who don't quite understand the terminology, when you say a good pipeline, what do you mean by pipeline?
So like whether that's you're a real estate agent or a loan officer, you're always building your pipeline because it takes anywhere from 30 to 45 days to close on a transaction, but there's so much work that goes into it prior to that. So like for loan officers, we work on referrals, and then those turn into applications, and then those turn into what we call pre-approvals. And then once you're pre-approved, then you can start making offers on houses. But that process could be months, you know, especially in this crazy market. You could be pre-approved for 3 or 4 months before you even get an offer accepted. It could be overnight, but typically it takes a little bit of work.
Definitely. So keeping yourself busy and keeping the opportunities coming. So as that deal is closing or creeping up to its closing time, you have another one in the pipeline ready to go.
Yep.
Awesome.
I kind of had a question for you. It's a little off topic.
Yeah.
What did you want to do like when you were growing up? Like, did you ever envision yourself being a loan officer?
No. Nope.
Like when you were a kid, like what did you want to do?
I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I don't know what that looked like.
Just because of your dad and your mom and your grandpa and everyone was?
Yeah.
Want to get what did you notice a lot growing up from like just watching your family, and you want to give a little insight on like what they do and stuff like that?
Yeah. So, I come from an entrepreneurial family. And so my parents have always been good with finances. They've always been in real estate. Like they've owned real estate. But my mom's side of the family comes from telecommunication background. So I've always had entrepreneurial, family members and grandparents and parents. So for me, looking up to them, that's kind of something that I wanted to do. And I've always had that inkling. Is that the right word?
Call it what you want. We're with you.
Inclination?
Yeah,
Inclination.
maybe.
Like, and I ran my own lawn mowing business when I was 13 with a buddy of mine. That moved into landscaping.
Was it Blaine?
It was Blaine, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Cool. So you've always had the drive in you to kind of just pretty much self-sufficient and finding the opportunity for yourself, whether it was cutting grass or writing loans. You've always had that drive to push yourself to make it work.
Yep.
I have a question. So like watching your family opposed to like other kids' families that were probably working a job, did you notice anything at like a young age that were like, there's a difference between like what my mom and dad can do and then like what Jimmy's parents do that work all day? Did you ever notice anything like that?
Yeah, it was weird because my dad, he's a home builder. So back in the early 2000s, he'd build, 3 or 4 specs in a year. And so he wouldn't get paid until like 3 or 4 months. So he'd have to, make a close and then go on the next house. So he'd go without a paycheck for months. So that's kind of what I grew up around, was not getting your paychecks every week or every 2 weeks.
Taught you how to budget.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. See, in the lifestyle I came from, there was money coming in pretty frequently, and we're not going to discuss how that money was coming in, but it was there, and my family just burnt through it.
I mean, I grew up, and my brothers can attest to it. My dad wouldn't take us shopping for food like once every 6 months.
Wow. That's
Your dad's also kind of cheap.
He is pretty cheap.
all right.
So, like, I grew up really frugal. Even though my parents were, they did well for themselves, but we always,
live below your means.
always lived below our means. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's something that people miss out on now.
Yep.
And I'm learning that as an adult, but it's working out well. So
Because I mean, you got to think too. Even like for me, like I'm buying probably gonna buy one of my dream homes, but it's like I didn't even do it or won't do it till I have rentals.
Right.
So it's like.
So now that we kind of have some of your background and an understanding of where you came from and the roots and how you got to where you are, what was it like when you and Zach first had your initial interaction and decided that you guys wanted to work together, or didn't decide that and eventually?
I'm just gonna say one thing: Indaba coffee.
He said that he hated me. He said I was.
All right, let's do this.
He said I was a douchebag.
I want to hear your point of view of the same situation, and then I want to hear yours. That'll be hilarious. And maybe it'll blend. So what was your take on Zach when you first met him?
I should pull up my phone because do you remember, this was like, so him and I met right when you were about 3 months into real estate, right?
No, I think at the time
6 months.
No, I was just. I think I was just about to leave Prime.
Mm-hmm.
So it was probably 3 or 4 or 5 months before I started the team, maybe 6.
Yeah.
So you were about 6 to 8 months in. I don't know what that time frame looks like, but
let's see. what was I've been in for almost 3 years. So yeah, probably about a year. About a year and a few months.
So
a
you're
year and a
in.
few months.
Do you guys meet at Indaba? Indaba's a coffee
Well,
shop
so
here,
yeah, one of my old loan partners, they went to high school with him. So, she was like, "Hey, you should meet Zach," and so I got his number and we went to coffee, of course, in Daba.
Yeah, that's where every meeting is held. Just so you guys know, every meeting is held still at that same spot, same table, same chairs, same everything.
It's like Central Spokane, and it's like the parking is free.
The coffee's amazing.
And the coffee's amazing.
Coffee is amazing.
And the park and to find downtown Central Spokane location with free parking, can't beat it.
Prime.
I know.
So yeah, him and I had a really good meeting. I thought, I don't know, like whenever you meet Zach, I just thought he was a little like cocky.
Do you still think he's a little cocky?
No.
He's outgrown that.
But Zach's the type of guy you just got to get you got to get to know before you got to make a judgment, and that was that was on me for making a judgment before I got to know him. But I think
I'm confident, but I wouldn't say I'm cocky.
Yeah. So like
and
fast forward like 4 months, him and I developed a really good friendship really fast. And he was like, "Hey, what'd you think of me when we first met?" I was like, "Oh, I thought you were a douche."
He's like, "Weird. I thought you were a douche as well."
No, I loved him. I was like, "This is the guy right here. I can."
So at first, you guys
Holy
not necessarily.
Shit! Is that a spider?
Oh my!
That's a big spider,
bro.
That's a cockroach.
Damn.
Oh, that's like a stink bug.
Oh, okay, we're good. Resume.
You should shoot it.
I'm
All
sorry,
right.
but no, I think for me it's like, I also don't give a fuck like what people think. I'm just so myself. So
Yeah.
I also know too, like I come into it, most people are like, "Who the fuck is this guy?"
So I don't know if you remember this, but so right before I met you, they came out with an app that could turn your face. You take a selfie, it turns you like 80 years old.
Yeah.
Do you remember that app?
Yeah.
Him and I were doing that at the table, and I was going through my photos last night, and I found his one, and I found mine. They were so
I
funny.
bet he looked the exact same as he does right now.
He was bald.
Yeah. Of course.
Hey, if you send it to Dayton, he'll put it on the podcast.
Okay.
It'll
Okay.
pull up.
Do that
I'll do
and
that.
send the
Right when he
screenshot.
I look
that.
like I'm freaking old.
That'll be sweet. We can see.
So
it.
you guys met. It doesn't sound like you guys initially were like, "Hey, this works." Shook hands,
no,
walked away, and we're like,
No,
"Let's
like
go."
initially we were like,
That's
we're gonna
how-
work together.
Oh,
That's
okay.
that's how I was, because it was like I at the time it was like a year and a few months, and I probably had done 25 35 deals, which is like that's a lot of deals for the first year. I mean, you're doing a good
amount.
You're doing a good amount. Yeah. And so I know Hunter wanted to work with me, and I think that's probably how Kelsey framed it was, "Hey, this guy doing really good. You should hit him up," or he's does a lot of buyers or whatever.
And I was already about 2.5 years, about 2.5 years into lending already.
Okay.
So I already had a team. I had 2 loan partners.
And he was already paying other people's marketing. So I was, and that's the thing is when I met with him, because I think this is the biggest thing for lender realtor relationships. Any realtor out there listening to this is I always say every lender wants to be in your pants, but they don't want to pay to get there. So that's just how it is. It's like every lender wants a piece of your pie, but they don't want to help you prepare it. They don't want to do anything. And so I was with a lender at the time who was, dude, I was really good friends with. I mean, honest to God, and he's a great dude and I love him, but he's been in the industry for 10 years, probably makes $200-300 grand in his sleep. And it was just one of those things where I wanted Mark, and he'd be like $400 or $500.
Felt like the not connection, but the chemistry and maybe ambition level wasn't quite equal.
I think the chemistry was there. I think mainly it was the ambition level, and it was
Because Zach and I, it's like when we met, it's hard to find somebody that is like you. And I think him and I are like that yin and yang, where we have that same drive and we have the same goals. And I think that I've helped his business grow, and I know for sure he's helped my business
And I
grow.
also
Not
feel-
just with like my own personal business, but my team. Like I've seen what he's done with his team, and it's catapulted me to do the same thing.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
so with the equal ambition, it's had equal growth in
Yep.
both the financing side
And real
the
estate.
real estate retail side.
I also feel like we're very similar in a lot of ways too. Like we're different, but we're also like super similar, and we have a lot of the same values, and I think a lot of like very similar personality traits. Is like even though he's more reserved, like we're still both like the crazy friend who just works hard. And
Yeah.
I'll admit it's always a good time when you guys are hanging out and we're doing something. Doesn't matter what we're doing,
Yeah,
whether it's
yeah.
dinner, just you know, it
And
doesn't matter. It's always a
I
good
also
time.
think too that we grew up the same way because like a lot of like growing up, I'm sure Hunter's parents said the same thing to him. A lot of our parents would be like, "You guys can't joke like this. You guys can't say these things."
Soap in the mouth.
Yeah, because we're like, because we'd always just say stuff because we knew we were joking, and I can always tell when I meet people like that don't take themselves very seriously, but can at the right times. And Hunter was like one of those people where like I can give Hunter shit, and he just totally understands. It's 0% serious. All just trying to make him
All
laugh.
love.
All love. Just not. It's not even like an insult. It's just we're just being goofballs.
Yeah.
And so I could tell he was raised that way. Like the moment, or at
Thick
least
skin. You can
not
talk some
necessarily-
shit. And
I
not
also
get
told
butthurt.
him in our first meeting, I was like, you remind me exactly like my brother Wyatt.
Yeah.
And was that true?
Yeah.
It's like, and I just want to slap the shit out of you.
Yeah. Except I feel like Wyatt takes it like 18 levels higher than me. But
Cool.
but I mean, it was cool because
Yeah.
just growing up that way and being around, like I could tell his friends were that way, and that's really rare. So I think we hit it off right away. for
Amazing.
sure.
So
And I remember my first call with Zach when he told me after our first meeting, he's like, "Hey man, I'm going to give you a shot." And like the thing in our business is you hear that a lot as a loan officer.
And you're super nervous as a realtor
Yeah, exactly.
because usually you're giving someone a shot because something isn't working.
Right. And it's a huge trust factor. And that's what I tell my loan officers is you have to, I mean, imagine me handing over my business to you. I have to be able to trust you to do it. What if I just met you for the first time?
Oh,
How
man.
am I going to be able to trust you? So
Yeah.
how are you as a loan officer going to build that trust with a referral partner to be able to let them hand you their business?
And I think it was the same thing too, because I was like, when I met him, I was like, I want to build a team. I need a lender to build a team with me.
Yep.
And I had to like earn his trust to be able to like show him like, hey,
It's a give and take.
because my results were there, but he just didn't know me, you know?
And so I remember like leaving the meeting, he was like, "Hey man, I'm going to give you a shot." And I was like, "Awesome." And we hear that a lot of times as loan officers, and it doesn't always come to fruition. And so he was like, he's like, "It might be late at night. It might be on a weekend, but I will call you and I'm going to give you a shot." And I remember where I was at when he called me. I was at Walgreens on Sullivan and he calls me. It's a Friday night at like 7 p.m. And I just come out getting some medicine or something. And
it's gonorrhea medicine.
I don't know. I honestly think I had a cold or something, so I was getting NyQuil.
it wasn't a cold. He was just going back to his old Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
He needed his
Drug dealer.
pharmaceuticals. I mean,
And so I take his phone call. He's like, "Hey man, remember when I told you?" And I think this is 2 or 3 weeks later. He's like, "Hey, remember when I told you I'd give you a shot?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Here's your shot." And so boom, that was our first deal. Jim.
Oh, yep. Mhm.
Yep.
Yep.
perfect. So nice, awesome, beginning to the relationship. Sound like you guys were okay with giving each other the opportunity to start creating together. And I mean, it's been a success. Things have blown up. Just quick numbers real quick. With the team that, collaboration that we have, how many deals per month do you think we're pumping out together versus the average person?
I mean,
average loan officer with,
I know for the team, I close at least like 8 or 10 deals a month with you guys.
I think that's pretty freaking awesome.
That's awesome.
Especially knowing that all of our agents are brand new agents.
Right.
That's
You guys are
pretty freaking
crushing
amazing.
it.
Well, dude, I was talking to Johnny even the other day, and he's like, how long have you been in this business? He's like, 3 months. I'm like, what's your volume? He's like, 1 million. That's crazy. And Amira, God, she's probably...
She's
been in
cranking
2
them
months.
out.
She's
She
been in 2
is a
months.
savage.
And she's about the same.
You have some heavy hitters.
She's
on your
about to
team, dude.
lock down an $800,000 property. Yeah. She's killing it.
Jeez.
Yeah.
The listing for...
No, she's about to represent a buyer on an $800,000 property and list their $500,000 property.
My goodness.
And
Yeah, I'm
she's
pretty
not
excited
even,
about that one.
Is that,
she's
that's
not
the-
even.
That's the Eagle Ridge house, right?
She's not even 60
That's
days
the one
in.
me and her partnered on.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
She's not even 2 months in.
Cool.
Nope,
So
that was a
And
good
that's
one.
the thing, even with Ashley, who's like super shy. She's not necessarily shy, but she's more reserved. Like, I think kind of like your personality.
I just sent her a pre-approval.
Yeah. She's been in literally like 2 weeks, and she has like 3 buyers.
It's crazy.
It's nuts. Can you imagine what it'll be in 6 to 12 months, and then we get Idaho going to.
Right. And that's the crazy thing about this industry is you can come from whatever background. It can be from sales. It could be a dishwasher. It could be, a
He
busser.
was freaking flipping burgers, probably washing dishes and all that crap too.
That's what I'm saying.
6 months ago.
6 months ago, yeah.
You can change your stars. So like if anyone's listening that is wanting to get into mortgage or real estate, anybody can do it. It just takes that drive.
That's what I
really.
Love. That's what
like
I love.
if you are not disciplined and you can't wake up on time and you can't take care of yourself and make your own bed, it's probably not going to work out.
It'll
for
be
you.
harder, but I can say that I did it without doing that every single day too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You're
Just
also
for the-
around some badass motherfuckers.
Exactly.
I don't disagree. But for all those people
No,
out
you
there that
have-
still
But
think
you
that you
show
don't
up.
have to, like, yeah, I show up and all that. I'm not saying it was easy, but it's not as hard as it
that's
looks.
what I
Bro,
love. That's,
you put in work.
It's
Yeah.
not as hard as it
That's what I love about Tyler too.
Don't give up.
Because I started off like in the kitchen too.
Yeah.
Like making my transition.
That's
and-
what's up.
I was flipping chicken at Chipotle when I first started.
Oh,
yeah.
Chipotle.
Yeah, for like fucking $12 an hour or something stupid. I was fucking sick of it. Driving a $500 beater with a heater. It was horrible. But all right, so let's get into the loan products.
Let's do it.
So we'll let you kind of just take the mic from here and give us your insight and just discuss the different options and ways of operating in real estate with.
Also, actually, I think a good first question was what do you think if a buyer was listening to this, someone who's doesn't have any idea? I think we should talk about what Alejo's saying, but I think start first at what is the biggest misconception in buying a home?
I love that question.
There's a lot.
So let's hear.
What's the most common
I would say money is a big one.
in regards to like?
How much you need.
Okay.
There's so many programs out there that are anywhere from 0% down to 3 or 3.5% down.
So you think people think they need too much money?
So yeah, 'cause
I was talking to a veteran one time. So VA loans, I'm not going to get super deep into the loan programs, but it's a 0% down loan program. So it's
for veterans.
For veterans. I was talking with a veteran, and he for 6 years, because one of his other buddies told him he needed a $40,000 down payment to buy a house, spent the next 6 years saving up, and then he talked to I think it was a realtor or a loan officer, and they're like, dude, you don't need any money. You're a veteran, right? He's like, yeah. He's like, you have eligibility? He's like, yeah. He's like, you need 0 down. So the second he bought a house. But he had the myth that he needed, for some reason, $40,000, a random number, to buy a house.
And I think you'll always hear this from like people our age because I don't think anyone here is even over 30. So
20%.
Yeah, exactly.
20%.
Yep.
20%. Every person I talk to.
Yeah, every kid our age has been told from their dad and mom or grandpa or uncle from that 40 to 70-year-old generation that they need 20% down to buy a house. Why do you think that is?
I mean, the lending laws back in the 70s and 80s were way different, even in 2000s. Before 08, so much has changed. So back then, a lot of the laws and what people were doing, a lot of people were putting a good amount down on houses.
But houses were also $10.
Right. $50,000. So what's 20% of that? I mean, that's pretty inexpensive, but
sure.
back then that was probably a lot of money. But so people, I mean, I think it drives from when you have a conventional loan and you put 20% down, you don't have any private mortgage insurance or any PMI. So I think a lot of
But
that
you can do that with 5%.
you can do it as little as 3% down.
Wow.
So you can, getting into the weeds here, but yeah, you can put less than 20% down and not pay monthly PMI.
Which is
And how much of a difference does that make on your monthly payment?
That could be anywhere from $150 to $300 a month.
which would I would say to save. Let's just say an average house is 400,000.
Mm-hmm.
What's 20% of that?
That's $80,000
Okay, so
just for the down
so
payment.
would you rather would put out 80 grand to get started, or would you? What's 5% of 40,000?
Of 400, $20,000.
Okay, so would you rather put out 20 and keep 60 in the bank, or just put out 20 and get started? Because that's the thing that just pisses me off. Because all these people who are told this don't understand money, and they think it is financially responsible to spend $60,000 to save $300 a month. I think that's crazy.
Yeah, I've had.
Well, they'd be saving less than that. There wouldn't even be that much.
I'm just saying. You said.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you're telling me 150 to 300 bucks. So I'm going worst case. Even if let's say 150 bucks, it's even dumber
Right.
than that.
Well, what a lot of people don't get is, so another segue into like what loan officers do is like we do a lot of financial coaching with our clients. And a lot of times we're moving money around, whether that's on a purchase or even a refinance. So a lot of times what I have clients do is if they have a house and they're trying to refinance it, or they're trying to sell one and purchase another, what they try and do is, because this is an old mentality, pay down their mortgage as much as possible, but keep $50,000 on credit cards.
Yeah, that's really weird.
I'm not joking. I have so many clients and they're paying 30% interest, but they would rather put money down on a 3% interest rate mortgage to get that lower than paying off their $50,000 in credit cards.
And that weirds me out because that's kind of how I was taught. I mean, that's just because I wasn't to the extent of you growing up, but I did have a mom who was, like A+ financial. My dad is very bad at finances. And then my mom's really good with finances.
Yeah.
So that was probably a lot of the reason they ended up not being together. But anyways, I grew up seeing good finances. So I know how numbers work and how money works. And that's kind of how my brain works, similar to yours.
Yep.
But so it's just weird because I'd always get seller net sheets. Like even with Jim, our first client, we'd be like,
same exact thing.
He's like, put it all in the house. And you're like, bro, why wouldn't you pay off your car?
So this is a perfect example.
The weirdest ones.
Our first client, and I'm not going to name names, but what we did with him was, it's all about financial coaching. And that's what I love about your guys' team is you guys go above and beyond the Call of Duty. And so you help your clients along the whole process, even on the lending side. And it's huge for a borrower because you're their sounding board. Because throughout, it can be a very stressful process for a lot of people. There's a lot of moving parts, especially if it's your first time buying a house. You don't know what you're getting into. And so to have someone there like a real estate agent, a lot of times you guys are there just as a sounding board. I mean, how many times does that happen?
We could go into detail a little bit on, because I think it's a really good example. I have a really close family friend that we're actively working on right now. They're considering refinancing or going to that next home. So we're still working some kinks out. But they have a vehicle that we would need to pay off to be able to get to the loan limit that they need to purchase a house that meets their satisfaction or whatnot.
So a lot of times, so segueing into that, we're manipulating as loan officers. We're manipulating a lot of the situations for the benefit of the client. And so a lot of times we find ourselves as like financial coaches. So for example, I'm just going to throw these numbers out there. Let's talk about this client. Let's say they have a $10,000 auto payment and their payment's $300 a month. $10,000 on a mortgage is $50 a month.
Yes.
So by taking $10,000 that would go towards the mortgage and we allocate that to the auto loan, that wipes out $300 a month. Yeah, their mortgage goes up $50, but they're saving $250 a month. Now they can qualify for $250 a month more,
which is way more
a month in a mortgage, which is $50,000.
So now you're doubling your money.
Right.
Or
so
no,
now
you're 5 times your money.
Correct. So now the client that might have been approved at 300 is now approved at 350.
The car thing,
just by simply moving numbers around to the benefit of the client.
The car thing is funny too because the cars are shit. They're all they're called depreciating assets because you're
more like depreciating liabilities.
That's exactly what they are.
Unless you buy like a Tesla or a Lambo or a Honda.
Whatever you want to say to justify your Tesla purchase.
Thank you. I'm just saying, unless you buy something like that, where it doesn't matter how, to a point where it doesn't matter. Because if you put $100,000 on a Lambo, someone's still going to give you an outrageous fucking amount of money for your Lambo.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like one of those. But that's the thing that blows me away, right? Is like you look at people who were, and I've had so many of them. There's another client where she wanted to put a bunch down. Her mortgage would have been like $2,000, but she had like $800 in car payments. And I didn't work this one with you, but it was like, dude, why wouldn't you pay your car off?
So not only do you have a paid off asset, because at that point, once your vehicle's paid off, it's an asset.
And it's an appreciating asset too, as at least a house.
Right. And then your money goes, towards your purchase instead.
And so that's why like, this is why I'm huge on realtors and loan officers having a partnership, because when you have 2 people and a borrower, so 3 people, all with the same goals, visions, and the end goal in mind, which is to close on the home, to get the borrower in the house and have them in a good financial spot to where they can afford the house, yada, yada, yada. It takes 2 people to do that. And so when you have a realtor and a loan officer who aren't on the same page, that's when issues can come up. So that's why I'm huge on partnerships. And that's why in situations like this, having a good loan officer is key, because how many times does it happen where you guys have a client that might be pre-approved with XY lender, at 250,000, and I look at their numbers
Almost every time. Continue.
I look at their numbers and I was like, well, it's because no realtor is the same. Just like no loan officer is the same. You can have somebody that might look at the same exact numbers I'm looking at, but approve them at 250, and to get them in the right house, they might need 300. And all I do is tweak some numbers. I'm not doing anything unethical. It's just like, hey, why don't we just pay off this credit card? What if we got, instead of this 2,000?
What if we get a cosigner?
What if we get whatever it is, just thinking outside the box. And that's what I'm huge on, is thinking outside the box and because at the end of the day, we want the borrower in a house.
Right. Including them.
And in this market, close to what they want as they can get.
Right.
Because no one's going to get what they want.
Exactly.
I mean, I mean, even with what I'm shopping at right now, I can't get exactly what I want.
So
So
go ahead,
for
Tyler.
some of our
You guys were going to try to talk shit. It's fine.
No,
definitely for all the first time home buyers out there, what would you say? Because obviously we kind of talked about how people are a little
Your mouth is too close. No, so first time home buyers.
yeah, we kind of talked about how they can they have a misconception of how much money they really need. If you could just keep it brief, obviously it depends on everybody's situation differently, but kind of what does somebody need if they were looking to buy a house?
Now, especially because the market is slowing, at least where we're from, and I think a lot of those kind of buyers can come back.
So maybe like a $300,000 price range, maybe a nice, easy first time home buyer. How much would that look like for somebody monthly compared to maybe their rent payment now? And then kind of maybe
Some
quick
qualifications.
credit score or something like that. Yeah.
So for loan officers, we have three overarching, I would say, templates that we use, not templates, but ideas for what we call them the 3 C's of underwriting. And these are like the 3 biggest things that a borrower needs to qualify for a home. You have collateral, capacity, and character. So basically what that is credit, income, down payment, or income more like debt to income. That's like your capacity. Because if you're at set income here, let's say it's $3,000 a month, you can't buy $1 million house.
Right.
But if you're making $20,000 a month, you can probably afford $1 million house. So it's all, and so each one, credit's a big one. So like jumping on your question here, if I was a first time home buyer, there's a couple things I would look at. I would look at working on your credit. Typically we want them over a 580, ideally over 600. Each loan program's different. Conventional has a different guidelines as FHA does versus VA versus USDA, but credit's a big one. And we could have a whole nother segment just on credit. Like that could be another hour. But then the other one would just be income. Like if you're a college student and you just got out of college and you spent 4 years nursing and you just solidified a nursing job, you can get a house. You don't need 2 years on the job.
Wow.
So that's another big conception too.
You can count people's school.
You can count, anything.
Cool.
Yeah, you can count college.
But that also comes down to the expertise of the loan officer you're working with. Because some people may just see past that and say, oh, well, they just got out of school. They haven't had income for any amount of time.
Right.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to help. Right. And that's discouraging any, somebody that's looking to take that step towards home ownership.
So income would be another one. A suggestion that I would make is just, because even if you're like seasonally employed, as long as you have work history, we can get you a house. So it's like, my suggestion would be like, if you have questions, reach out to your real estate agent and they can get you in contact with a loan officer, or reach out to one of these guys, or reach out to me and we can
will throw some links in the descriptions for you guys on YouTube watching this. We're going to put in Heritage Home Loans application. So if you do have some questions, you can actually speak to Hunter and he'll be able to help guide you through the process with some of these things we're talking about. Yeah,
because there's no one borrower that's the same, just as there's no one house that's the same, And so every borrower's situation is unique. But what I've seen is if you don't qualify today, we can get you on a roadmap to be able to qualify hopefully very soon.
Yeah.
And so that's what I know you guys are big on, is setting up that game plan. And that's what my team's big on, is setting up that game plan, whether that's on credit or maybe, hey, we just need 2 more months on the job for X, Y, and Z. The other one is down payment. And so there's a lot of programs out there, anywhere from 0 down to 3% to 3.5% down. And those are pretty much the minimums across the board. So you don't need an exuberant amount of money. You don't need 20% to purchase a home. If you have it, great. But like Zach was saying, you don't need that, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. You don't need that huge lump of money to purchase a home. And so my suggestion would just be like, start saving as much as you can, because the more you put down, the better it's going to be on your payment.
What does that look like though on a $300,000 house?
If you're putting the minimum down?
No, let's say like, 3.5%.
3.5%, you're probably looking at $1,700, maybe $1,650 in Spokane at least. Yeah.
Okay. So are there pros and cons between coming up with your own down payment and using one of these programs you've kind of mentioned recently about like down payment assistance? Or because I know people ask about it, and I got a follow-up question after that. So the difference between coming up with your own down payment and using a government program or something to help you pay for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's two regular programs that are actually fully 100% financed, 0% down, and that's USDA and VA.
Okay.
And so I could dip into those two kind of separately because it would take forever to talk about them.
Right.
But then you have FHA and conventional, and they are still FHA and conventional loans, but you're going through the state, whether that's in Washington State or Idaho State. It could most of the states have what we call first-time home buyers, and what that looks like is it's down payment assistance through the state. So, for example, through Washington State, and basically what they do is they go and subsidize your down payment of if you're FHA. They'll basically cover that 3.5% down, and it's a second mortgage on the house. So it eventually has to be repaid, whether you go to refinance it or sell the home. It does have to get paid back, but it's deferred, so you don't have to make payments on it. And that's just Washington State. But there are different overlays that they have, whether that's credit or debt to income. So that's what I would suggest, just speaking with a loan officer about it, someone who, I used to teach the classes, I'm licensed with the state. And just talk to somebody who's experienced with the programs, because, they need to be licensed through the state to be able to originate those loans, but also talk to somebody who actually has done a lot of them, because there's a lot of great, there's a lot of loopholes and guidelines that they have on top of FHA and conventional. And so your loan officer and realtor just need to know the guidelines on them.
So go ahead and kind of give some detail on that when you talk about overlay and those guidelines when you have those programs, because I know there's been a couple times where I've had clients kind of on both sides where you've both told them, well, if they can do, this over there, I have an overlay that doesn't quite allow me to reach this X percentage of payment to income or whatnot. And sometimes you just, for the greater good, advise them to go elsewhere.
Regular
so
down
you
payment.
So, different alternative solutions so they can figure it out. So like, what's an example of that? If you have your own down payment, what kind of debt to income or payment to income can you work with? And if you use a program from the government, how much does that restrict your purchasing power?
Yeah. So us as lenders, we look at your monthly debt to income. And what that looks like is we look at the projected mortgage payment plus whatever other debts you have that are reoccurring monthly. So whether that's child support, anything on credit, so that'd be credit cards, student loans, auto payments, anything that's revolving. We don't look at utility bills, cell phone bills. We don't look at that stuff. But anything, when we pull your credit, it pulls that in. And so that's your overall debt to income ratio. So for conventional loans, typically we want to see you under 50%. And of course, that depends on your down payment and credit score, et cetera. But typically that's the most you can go on conventional.
And just for clarification, when we're talking about debt to income, you're talking about the monthly debt expense that's going out, not necessarily the debt amount that you owe in total for that account, correct?
That doesn't include like utilities. And
correct.
So what doesn't that include? Because I think a lot of people think, cell phone.
He just went over that.
Oh, okay.
You're on your phone. But I'm going to go into the mortgage payment though. So when you're looking at your projected mortgage payment, what we include in that is your principal and interest, your taxes, your property taxes on the property, homeowners insurance, that is actually lumped into your payment as well, and then mortgage insurance.
Okay.
So unless you're conventional putting 20% down, or you're buying out your mortgage insurance, or you're on a special program that eliminates it, you have that monthly expense. And then if you have like HOAs, we include that in your debt to income, even though it's not a part of your mortgage payment. So that's that plus whatever other debts we pull in on credit or outside of that. And then that's your overall monthly debt to income.
Okay.
So for the down payment assistance programs, it varies based on your credit score, but it's anywhere from like 45% maximum debt to income up to 50.
Wow.
But if you have a down payment, FHA, if it approves, you can go up to like 56.9. I mean, that's like the max.
And that's a pretty big difference when thinking about buying power and overall loan amount, right?
It could be the difference of almost $50,000.
Wow. And I'll tell you what, I got to give credit to Hunter because we had a deal where we were like literally down to like, what were we at? 56.8% payment to income. And
I've done some crazy stuff with you guys. You guys push me past the breaking point sometimes.
We just we bring out the better side of you. That's all that is.
Hunter always likes to play it super like conservative too. So he always likes to leave room.
And they're like, Hunter, I need 20,000 more.
And I'm like, Hunter.
And then it just happens.
I'm like, Hunter.
I make it happen.
What are we at right now?
And all we owe him is one extension.
49.99.
Yeah. How high can we go? 49.99. How are we at right now? 45.
49.
Well, I'm going to need 49.99, bro.
What do we have to do to get that?
That conversation's happened more than once.
So what does a perfect deal look like for you? Because we kind of gave some attention to, those who aren't necessarily sure that they could even buy a home and ways of getting that done. Now, what about those that do have the financial understanding and literacy so they understand where their money's at and what would be the ideal, program for you to use with somebody in a great position where they have their own down payment, they can buy whatever they want, but what does that loan look like for you?
I mean, so something I love VA loans. It's arguably the best loan program out there. It's it's strictly for veterans. Or
shout out to all of our troops that have protected us and allowed us to keep this
let's
freedom.
go.
Simplify, baby.
America.
Let's go.
America.
Great loan program. I love VA loans.
I seen that movie.
Conventional loans, however, are typically the most competitive in this market.
Why are you the best loan officer in the world?
I don't know.
It's because it's hair.
Because I love you guys.
It's because it's hair. Nothing else.
Conventional loans are great. I mean, we do a decent amount of FHA loans too. I do a decent amount of USDA. I don't really have like a favorite loan to do. I wouldn't say there's one that's easier than others.
Kind of whatever fits the client at the time.
Yeah, it's whatever fits the client. For me, it's not about the loan program per se that makes it easy. It's all about the client and the property. If I have a client that is ultra responsive and they are respectful and they turn in documents in a timely manner, that's when you can have a very smooth transaction.
I think that's another thing too. I'm proud about like how we work as a team and just Dream Team in general. Because like as a new agent, I never was taught to like push away clients that were not very responsive. And I think that we've all been doing a very good job of training our new people like that, as well as you helping us do that, and as well as teaching your probably LOs to do the same thing.
Right.
So I feel like that's been a really good thing that we've implemented, I think, in the last like 6 to 8 months.
Well, because a lot of times I get it. A borrower's so busy with inspections, they're ordering paying for an appraisal. They're trying to move, right? Trying to pack up boxes, and then they have to work a full-time job, and then they got kids, so they got a lot going on. But I think sometimes
they need to sign documents for their realtors.
Yeah, and then they have to turn in 1 million documents to their loan officer. So I think a lot of times they forget that, someone else is on the other end of that transaction and they are going through the same thing or maybe even worse. Because typically that person that's selling their home is trying to buy another one as well.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes buyers forget that. And so they don't put a priority on getting documents to the loan officer in a timely manner. I'm not saying all borrowers are like that, but a suggestion I would give.
I almost think every borrower that does that too, especially in this market, is a borrower who like also is unrealistic of like what they want in this market too.
Because
I feel like they're the same thing.
Because something that happens is if I pre-approve you back in June, we're in September now. I mean, this is 3 months later?
Right.
And
a lot can change.
A lot can change. I mean, your documents are pretty much all expired, like pay stubs, bank statements.
What by expired, you mean they're just outdated,
credit,
right?
Yeah. Because we need credit could almost be expired. It depends. Yeah. And so if you have new credit inquiries, if you've opened new accounts, and so that just adds layers to the loan officer and their team on what they have to do. So what I would suggest is, for any new buyers or anyone who hasn't bought a home in the last 15 years, when you go under contract or even before that, just expect your loan officer will be needing more documents, and don't get frustrated with that. Just expect it going into it that I should be expecting that I'll need documents that my loan officer and their team need documents, and even my real estate team needs documents or needs signatures. And this is just part of the process.
And I think you hit it on the head when you said when they go under contract, tell them to expect to have to give more.
Right.
I feel like some clients just think that
They're like,
all right,
well, I
got
already
the
turned in my
pre-approval,
pay stubs 2
I
months
turned in
ago.
pay stubs.
Yeah, I should
they
be
accepted
good.
my offer. Now we should just be, hitting the finish line. But there's so much more that we need to do. And it seems like 30 to 45 days is a long time to them. But there's a lot of shit we got to cover on our side to get things done.
Right.
You know, it's like one of my favorite things too is like after
It's also why we
transaction
get paid so well.
is like when my buyers, and I'm sure your guys have done the same, is and they're like, Hunter's team is so annoying. I love when they say
Yeah.
that shit. I'm like, yes, that means they're doing a good job. If your loan officer is annoying, that means they do a good job.
Yeah.
If they're
Well, I have a really solid team, and that's like what Heritage, and that's the company I work for. That's what we do differently than a lot of other mortgage companies out there. Is we build teams around the loan officer, and so I have 3 full-time loan partners,
and they're just hounding people, bro.
yeah. And so like I have I have a full-time loan partner, Caitlin. All she's doing is
She's awesome.
Yeah, Caitlin's phenomenal.
She's a workhorse.
Yeah, she's amazing. All she's doing is tracking down referrals. She's constantly contacting them to fill out applications. Her follow-up is better than mine.
Yeah.
Like, she's amazing. She's following up on documents. And so she's getting the file ready for me to pre-approve. And so because we have, so many people that are referred to us that she's constantly in contact with them. And how many times do you hear as real estate agents, or do I hear as a loan officer when I'm talking to a realtor, is my loan officer isn't following up with my clients.
Yeah.
The average loan officer calls a referral twice.
Wow.
And then they give up. Our team does minimum 7, like calling, texting,
Damn.
emailing. And so like we're big on follow-up because we get it. A borrower gets busy. Like I have so many borrowers that
just
are
even
like,
people in general.
like, oh, I got a family member that got sick. I have a family member in the hospital. I had a death in my family. Oh,
Just life.
Car
life
accident,
happens.
yeah.
And we don't want to give up on that borrower because I truly believe in home ownership. I believe it to my core, and I want people to get in homes. And so,
Yeah, because if you look at it now, I mean, I have friends that didn't buy 2 years ago,
Right.
who could have bought a shit shack for $170,000 and who are selling it for $270,000.
it can lead someone to financial freedom.
That's what it did for me.
Right.
I'm
You're a walking testimony.
I'm a
for
walking
that.
testimony, and I tell people, and I'm not afraid to share my story to anybody. And you know what? That's actually what makes it. That's what allows me to express my passion when
It's
I'm talking
real.
to people, is because
real.
I can say, "Here's what I did. These are the steps I took, and I'm holding your hand, walking you through that process as well. And look how I turned out."
That's why I'm excited for him to buy a house.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to be dope.
We'll get there.
But before we
yeah.
get too far from it, I'm going to tell you,
6
I'm going to
months
just
to a
drop a
year.
dime on you guys and anybody else that's listening on what I tell people when they bitch about their lender bugging them so much about documents. I just tell them this. If you were letting somebody borrow $300,000, how much would you want to know about their life and financial decisions?
That's good.
And they're like,
just-
oh, yeah, I guess so. Here, let me get it over to him. And you're going to lose your earnest money.
And last suggestion.
Earn his money now.
Last suggestion I would say, if you're a new buyer or you haven't bought in a while, I would suggest your loan officer would suggest this too, is just disclose as much upfront to your loan officer as possible. I've had clients try and hide if they pay child support, if they have back
Dude,
child support, if they have IRS liens against them, if they have
their
liens
jobs
on their
are
house,
contracted.
if whatever it is, whatever that thing is,
I would like
that-
to disclose to you that I'm a loser.
Well, no,
Does that
whatever
help
that
you
is,
in
because
buying
we're
us
gonna
a
find
house?
out. We're the loan officer processing underwriting. They're gonna find out eventually if you own a property in Montana that you bought 30 years ago. We're gonna find out about it.
Yeah.
So, or if you had a foreclosure. Yeah, if you had a foreclosure 6 years ago, we're gonna find out about it. So when you're filling out your application, just be 100% honest.
I'd say there's
because,
I would only say like once in a blue moon, something slips through the cracks somehow.
Right.
And it never makes sense.
Right.
Because I know that, like I've had so many deals, not always with you, but just deals that are like, somehow this foreclosure like slipped through the cracks or whatever it is. I mean, just an example. But I mean, it's just weird. It doesn't happen as often as you'd think. So it's just tell it up front.
I have one more thing that I would like to kind of just put out there for everybody, and you can help explain this as well and the different layers to it, and then we can wrap up so we're not dragging this out too long. But
we could talk forever.
go ahead and give us the details where there's you and your team and the initial documents and the packaging of a deal, and then the underwriting phase, and then the closing documents and everything else to actually
Like
hit
from start to finish?
From start to finish. Like once they actually get the documents in your hands, how does that progress from you guys packaging it, verifying everything, dishing it out to underwriters, it coming back, and then reaching the closing table
Also,
for them to
explain
sign?
what an underwriter is.
I will.
So, because some people don't understand those layers. They're like, I already gave it to them. And when you tell a buyer or a client, whoever that is, hey, the underwriter needs this, they're like, I already gave you that.
And they're
it's
like, who is that?
I always
Right.
describe the underwriter as like, have you ever seen The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah.
He's the man behind the curtain.
Okay.
True. It's true.
So go ahead and break down those
Yeah.
layers for us so we can kind of help everybody understand the different dynamics and levels to the finances.
This will be big because I had no idea. Like my family's bought real estate for a long time. I had no idea about any of this before getting in the industry. And so like I look back and I'm like, okay, Hunter, when you're talking to somebody who's new, just like don't over talk because like, I mean like DTI, if you say DTI, what do you
Yeah,
think?
the
you know?
DTI on your conventional loan with
Yeah.
the programs and overlays.
And I
that
see
we-
too many people doing that. And I'm
Gabe
like,
the other day even was like, Hunter's talking too
I know.
technically for me.
And I'm like, and I had to call myself out because I was like, okay, Hunter, you gotta tone it back a little bit. Okay, debt to income, this is what it looks like, stuff like that.
Realtors do it too.
Yeah, it happens. But so let's say I get a call and a client's like, hey, I want to buy a house. Okay, cool. So this is the first step in the process. You fill out an application with us. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes. Very easy. You can do it on your phone, laptop, over the phone, in person.
Check out the link in the description.
There's a million ways to do it. Takes 10 or 15 minutes. And then after that, I look at your application, or my team does, and they send you a list of documents that we need. And typically what that is this is just a general blanket statement, but we'll need 2 years of W-2s, sometimes tax returns for 2 years, most recent pay stubs, most recent bank statements, and driver's licenses. Those are pretty much the most common ones. If you have a more complicated life, it adds layers of complicity.
Like child support.
Child support, divorce, multiple properties, foreclosures,
foreclosures.
bankruptcies, all of that. But those are the basic ones. Once I get your documents, then it moves. Then I review your file and I look at what loan programs that we're going to fit into. I look at what our rate's going to be, closing costs, how much down payment we're doing.
What's closing costs?
Closing costs basically, so you have, let's say you're on a 3% interest rate conventional loan. That's you have a 3% down payment of $300,000, that's $9,000. Typically closing costs are anywhere from 2 to 3% of your loan. And so that's, let's say it's 3%, that's another $9,000. It could be 6, it could be 9, but closing cost is basically what it takes to close out your loan. And so technically the sellers can pay that. They can pay your closing costs. So if
Probably
you're
not in this market.
probably not in this market, but technically they can.
I disagree. I just had somebody pay $5,000 of mine.
It's starting to
You
soften
can do
up.
it for sure.
It is.
You
Starting to
definitely can do it.
It's starting to soften up.
And so closing costs, that has to do with, so on the loan origination side, you have an appraisal, you have title and escrow fees, you have usually a processing and underwriting fee from the lender just to originate your loan, to process and underwrite it. And then you have like recording fees. And then a big portion of it is your escrow account. And so we put into what we call an escrow account. We prepay taxes and homeowners insurance in that account because at closing, we escrow anywhere from 12 to 15 months of homeowners insurance because 12 months of homeowners insurance is due upon closing. And then we want reserves for property taxes. So that account could have anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000.
And that all comes out of the closing cost.
Correct.
Okay.
So I go over all of these programs with the client, and I was like, hey, this is how much I look at what our loan amount could be, like what we're approved at. And so I talked to my client, and I'm like, hey, we're looking at an approval of $300,000 on a 3% interest rate, a 3% down conventional loan. I go over rate options, closing costs, all of that. I call the realtor, and I was like, hey, this is what we're looking at. We got John Doe approved a 300 conventional. Cool. Send out an email. I was like, hey, this just breaks down all the numbers. So from there, once you're pre-approved, that's the fun stuff. That's when I pass it off to you guys, and that's the green light. So that's when you guys take the client and start showing them houses.
Yep.
And that could be, you could get them under contract in the first weekend, or it could take months. I mean, it's just depending on what their price range is, how competitive it is, where they're looking, their needs,
how picky they
are, or like what their time frame is. I mean, if they need to move in the next 30 days, they need to start writing offers tomorrow. So it just depends on their needs and wants and motivation.
All right. So we get an accepted offer, dish you the contract. What happens at that point?
So once I have a contract,
I asked for all the documents again you just gave me.
pretty much. So once
I need a blood oath.
Yeah.
once I get under contract, because I'm not able to lock in an interest rate until I have a property address. So that's when I go over all the numbers again. I'm like, because the rates could change. They could go down, they could go up by the time I just, went over options with you a month ago. So then I talk about locking in an interest rate. And what that means is if we lock in today, let's say our rate is 3%, and we lock in today and I lock in on a 30-day lock. What that means is if closing is 30 days out, the interest rate that we lock in today doesn't change.
Whether it goes up or down, you're stuck here.
Yeah,
You're
which
stuck
is
here.
good because
Rates are going up.
I would imagine. So yeah, that's another thing is I made the sarcastic comment about probably not in this market, but to their point, market at least here is starting to soften up, which is good for first time home buyers.
Right.
But that's also because economic uncertainty and some rates are going up, and then typically that happens no matter what into a new presidency and into winter anyways. So if you let the rate go, that's called floating.
Correct.
Which means you're studying the bond market and then seeing where rates are going. So if you're seeing and that makes you a good loan officer because you're actually checking that stuff every day to forecast.
I'm checking it usually. If I have a client that's going to be locking in the next couple of days, I'm watching it every couple hours. I'm tracking, I'm watching updates.
Hourly?
Yeah, not hourly, but every couple hours.
Because I remember
I have it pulled up on, it's one of my tabs. It's actually always open. The bond market, I get text messages, I get calls, depending on if it's a bad day.
that's amazing.
Yeah. And so for example, I locked in like 7 clients last week in the middle of the week, and then rates went up probably 1/8 to 1/4% within like a week.
Wow. Yeah, which is good because it's weird because in the last time we bought together, you were floating me.
Right.
But in this time that I'm buying
a lock-in
another house,
bias.
you're going to lock it.
Wow.
So it's kind of interesting.
And it's all, that's why having a good loan officer that knows the market and studying it could save you a lot of money. I remember I floated a client overnight, saved him $2,000.
Wow.
Oh,
And then boom, locked in, and then rates went up. And if I didn't lock him, I would have lost that $2,000 savings.
Because didn't my mom, remember when my mom was buying, we told her to lock and she didn't do it. And I think
her rate went up 1/8.
And so what were you going to lock her in at? And what did she end up getting? Because she didn't listen to you and me.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was 2.875.
And she got like a 3 something.
It was like 3 or 3.1.
I think it was
or
3.
maybe it was 2.7 and 3.
I think
don't
it was
remember.
3.1 or 3.2.
Cool. So we got a contract.
crazy.
We dish it to you. You lock in a rate. And what's that next layer? How long or what steps need to happen before we get it to underwriting?
Yeah. So from the next step, once I lock you in, I pass it to my loan partner, Jackie. She's amazing. She's another part of my team.
Jackie's awesome too.
Jackie's phenomenal.
My cousin, shout
Zach's
out
cousin.
Jackie.
Shout out Jackie. She basically helps me take the file from contract to close.
She's related to you?
Yeah, I feel really
Nothing alike.
I feel really bad for her.
Oh, she got the good genes.
Yeah, really good genes.
Yeah, she got hair.
That's all.
Yeah, so Jackie's been on
Tyler's
my
laugh.
team.
He's like, me too, bitch.
So Jackie's been on my team for about 1.5 years. She comes from like property management experience, HR. So she picked it up from the ground running. She's worked her way up from a loan partner 1 to a loan partner 2, and so she handles my entire pipeline from anything from contract to close. So she's making sure appraisals are being ordered, disclosures are going out, we're closing on time.
She's your Swiss Army knife. She's doing it all other than signing on the docs.
Exactly.
I feel like you got Caitlin. She's kind of doing the everyday stuff, but like Jackie's doing the dirty work kind of stuff.
And so, so Jackie helps me from basically once we go on a contract to close, let's say it's 30 days. So Jackie's my right-hand woman from there till closing. And so from the next step, once I lock in your rate, then we send out what we call initial disclosures. And so that's usually 50 to 70 pages, and we need 12 to 15 signatures.
Which are subject to change, correct?
Subject to change, but it's going over all your disclosures. And this is since 2008 that we have all these regulations. We have loan estimates, the Patriot Act. I mean, we have credit disclosures on there. I mean, everything. So it's just a lot of...
For those who are listening, I know it seems like a lot to go over, but I highly recommend reading through it all so you understand what
listening to this
is.
a few times.
Yeah, listen to this a few times or get in contact with, your local lender, whoever that is, and ask about what those are because it's good to know what you're signing. It is a lot of stuff, but go over it all.
And it's especially for first-time home buyers, it's a lot of trust going into your loan officer and your realtor because you've never been through the process before. So you're like, I hope they have my best interest in mind, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not always the case.
Unfortunately.
I mean,
always
there's
side to any
amazing
business.
I have a lot of good loan officer friends out in the market. There's a lot of really good loan officers, a lot of really good realtors. But I mean, occasionally you run into somebody that might not have their best interest in mind. And so if your loan officer is suggesting that you float and then your rate goes up 0.5% in 2 weeks,
Yeah, because maybe
best.
maybe they're new, or maybe they don't even watch the market.
Yeah, or maybe they don't. Yeah, so
because
that's
they do. Let's say you do 30 loans a month. Maybe someone does 5 a month, but they don't really put a lot of work into it. Just do referrals, which is
Right.
fine. However you want to run your business, but sometimes it doesn't always work out in your favor.
And so those initial disclosures, it's very easy just to click through them. But I mean, maybe just spend a little bit more time and just kind of speed read a couple of them.
Yeah.
And just get to know, be like, hey, I actually know what I'm signing. Because I have clients all the time. I'm like, hey, if you have time, just read through a couple of these. And they call me with questions. They're like, oh, I had a question on this, this, and this. And sometimes they find errors. They're like, actually, I just moved and that's not my address anymore. Stuff like that. So initial disclosures, they sign those, and then we push it to processing. And so that's typically, we're waiting on the realtor to tell us, hey, green light on appraisal. And so basically we're in a holding pattern until.
What's processing do?
So processing, they're in-house for us. We have our own processing team in-house at Heritage, and they're amazing. They basically do everything behind the scenes. And so they're processing the loan, and what that looks like is they're doing all the order outs. So they're doing verifications of employment. They're doing whether that's electronic, written, or verbal. They're doing verifications of rent if we need that. They're pulling certificates of eligibility for VA loans. A lot of times, they're pulling title, home insurance. They're reviewing the file to make sure we have all the documents in there. And so
some more of like the dirty work stuff.
Yeah,
they're
doing all the back end paperwork. And so they're an integral part of our team, because without them, we wouldn't be able to close loans. And so basically what this looks like is it goes into processing. We typically have that reviewed in 48 hours on a purchase transaction. And so our processor will send Jackie and I an email and say, hey, great file. We need A, B, C, and D. And that just could be, hey, the W-2 is cropped on the right side, or it means we need an updated pay stub, or hey, there's a
verification of employment.
This is a big one. There's a large deposit on your bank statement from 2 months ago. We need to source it from grandma.
What's considered large? Is it a certain percentage or a certain dollar amount?
Typically, it's anything over 50% of your gross monthly income.
Gotcha.
So if I have calculated $5,000 a month and your gross income's $2,500. Typically, anything over that, if it's a large deposit that can't be sourced, like that's anything outside of.
Where the hell did this come from?
If it's just like a cash deposit or from Venmo, we're gonna have to paper trail it, and that's because
what's the reason for that?
That's because of the money laundering acts back in 2008.
Gotcha.
Anything. These are just laws. These are Dodd-Frank laws. That came because of the '08 crisis, the financial crisis.
And that's where that next documentation comes through, where verify where this income came from. We need this additional document.
And Zach says this all the time. This is to protect our industry. I'm glad that we're overregulated, because it protects our industry from another crisis. And it makes sure that, it's all about IBR. So us as loan officers. I think that's a lot
of the reason we've seen this in the market too, is just like how, I guess with how strict it's gotten, I think there's been a lot more confidence in the market.
Yeah, so it's like ATR, it's ability to repay. And so that's a big thing in our industry, is a borrower's ability to repay, because we don't want that borrower. I mean, right now in the US, foreclosure rates are literally at their historic lows.
Wow.
And that's so good. It's because, it's a combination of a lot of things, but it's because equity positions for borrowers are at an all-time high.
Right.
The one of the big one is the lending regulations are very tight. It's not like '08 prior, where you could just walk in, pull a credit, say you make X amount per month.
Fog a mirror and you get a loan.
Right. It's not like that anymore. So if a borrower qualifies for a home, they qualify for the mortgage. They qualify for that payment.
So what he was saying, so you go into processing, and you're saying you're waiting for the green light from the lender. So that would from the realtor. So that on our side would be like inspections are done.
Yep.
Right.
So once inspections are done, what do you do?
So once you give me the green light, hey, order the appraisal. And so typically, depending on what our closing date is, I will either just order a normal appraisal at a regular cost, or sometimes if we're on a very tight timeline, I'll put it in for a rush. So I'll pay an extra $150, $200 to get that report back.
What's an appraisal?
So an appraisal is when you are purchasing a property and you're getting a traditional mortgage. Typically, not all the time. Sometimes you can get an appraisal waiver if you if you're putting a large chunk down on the house. That's another side note. If you're putting 20% down or more on a house, check with your lender to see if you can get an appraisal waiver. It's not always the case, but sometimes you can get
And
it.
it can save you a lot of money.
It can save you a lot of money. It can make you close way faster. I get a couple a month.
It's just as good as a cash offer.
Yep.
And I think in this market, especially at higher price points where, this, let's say next summer, spring, or this competitive, as it was this year, I think those can help beat cash offers.
Right, it's huge. So if you can get an appraisal waiver, cool. It saves you. I mean, just the cost of an appraisal is $700-800, and then if you have an addendum for if the appraisal comes in low, boom, that saves you money there, and it saves you time. You can close super quick. So, but if you have an appraisal, which is on any government loan, if you're purchasing a property, or if you're putting less than 20% down on a conventional loan, you pretty much have to do an appraisal. And what that is it's not like an inspection per se, but it's on the lender's side that we send out a third-party appraiser to appraise the property. So they're going to actually inspect the property to make sure they're not doing a full-on inspection, but they're taking pictures of the property to make sure it's in functioning order. Make sure
it's worth what they're lending
livable,
the money on.
Right, it's livable. And then they're also pulling comparables on the property to make sure it's worth what it's for sale for and under contract for. Perfect. So if it's for sale $300,000, the appraiser is going to pull comparables in the area, within a couple mile radius, within the last 9 months typically, to make sure that this property is actually worth at least $300,000.
And would you say that a lot of buyers shouldn't work, because since they have that in the process, obviously it'd be different if you have the waiver because you have enough down to where that doesn't matter.
Right.
But for our clients, wouldn't you say they should, whether the market goes down next year and prices are lower, or the market continues and we're going to continue to see bidding wars, wouldn't you say to not really worry about it because the comparables and the appraisal, which we still have access to comparables too, will pretty much tell all at what number they'll end up being?
Yeah, correct. I think an appraisal for a buyer is a good thing. I mean, for FHA or VA or USDA buyers, they're pretty strict on the condition of the property. So they're making sure, I know it's annoying sometimes, but they're making sure it meets government code.
I just sell it as a benefit to all my buyers. I said,
Right.
Look, they're just making sure that you're not paying more for this property than it's actually worth.
It's to protect the borrower and the lender.
Cool.
To make sure that,
right. In reality, that's what it is. They just want to make sure that if they need to foreclose on a property, they're going to get their money back, or at least most of it.
I always think it's very important to explain that to buyers too, because I think a lot of them worry about that, especially in like today's market.
It's to protect them.
Or if it goes down, they're worried that they're always paying too much. No matter what, everyone's always worried that they're paying too much.
We just had one come in.
Yeah. So,
Well, should we even say that?
well, we won't put names or anything, but
Yeah.
we had a deal where we locked in the property at a $398 purchase price. We got the seller to pay $5,000 out of the $8,000 in closing.
Check this out.
We had them put in over $5,000 of repairs on the inspection response, and the appraisal came back at a $450,000 price point.
That's pretty good.
Pretty crazy.
No lube. No lube.
I think, and you guys weren't around.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's good.
I know we're probably going over time here, but you guys, this is just such
So
good
after appraisal,
This
wrap
is
it up.
just gold.
It's just too good information. But I personally think, and I'm starting to see it, you guys weren't around for it, but I think the market is going to go back to what it was 2 years ago.
I agree.
And 2 years ago, what Alejo saw, not with the appraisal, that's just great for the buyer, but what's going to be happening is a lot of getting $5,000 or $7,000 during inspections and getting closing costs. And
It's going to be fun.
and still, on the right house, if you price it right, you're going to get offers and not get your closing costs paid or whatever. But the normality of inventory building up, even though it will still be low, and just being able to pick more houses, look at more houses, have a night to actually sleep on it. I think in the next 6 months, with probably rates going up and the things I'm seeing, I think that's going to be more of a normality.
For sure.
Perfect. So appraisal comes back good. We're ready to keep moving forward. What's the next step with your lending
so
team?
once we make it out of processing, they send it to my team. They send us what we call a needs list. Okay, we need A, B, C, and D. We go back to the borrower and we're like, hey, we need this, this, and this. Cool. Boom. The quicker you can send that back to the loan officer, the better. If it takes you a week, you are potentially delaying your closing date. If it takes you 2 weeks, you're sacrificing not meeting your closing date.
Which is not good because
It's not good.
You're on the seller and their merit and their will to extend. Sure, they probably will, because if they have to go back on, they're dealing with another inspection appraisal.
Right.
Perfect. So we get you the documents.
Yep. So once we're good on that, then my processing team pushes it into underwriting. So there we go on the underwriting term.
The man behind the mask.
Yes,
Behind
the
the
man or
curtain.
woman.
Yeah.
So underwriting, basically what that is it's a second step in the process. It's like a further level of review past our processing team. And so you just got to think as a borrower, you're going to have anywhere from 12 to 15 people touching your file at any point. I mean, these are the big portions of it. We have transaction coordinators that are like junior processors, and they're touching your file. We have funders, closers, post-closing. I mean, you have a lot of people touching your file. So just think that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and the quicker you can get stuff in, the quicker it's going to be throughout the whole process, just because there's so many layers of complexity. So the underwriter, what they are is they are licensed federally, whether that's on they're conventionally licensed, FHA direct licensed, VA licensed, USDA. They have to have certificates and licenses to even underwrite for those loan programs. So it takes a lot of time, training. It takes a lot to become an underwriter. And what they do is, so the conventional guideline book is like that big, and it's like 1,000 pages. And that's just like Fannie Mae. And then Freddie Mac has another 1,000 pages. FHA, same thing. Wow. So there's guidelines per loan program that are extremely long. And the underwriter is basically checking to make sure this borrower is approved on this loan program.
Meets
they're
all
checking
the criteria.
Credit, income, assets, and then they're checking all the guidelines, employment, to make sure that borrower fits that loan program. And then typically they give us a conditional approval, and they're like, okay, just like what happened with processing. They're like, we need A, B, and C. And so we go back to the borrower and we're like, hey, we need A, B, and C. Cool. Then we push it back into final underwriting. Then we get the 3 best words in lending industry, which is clear to close.
Clear to close.
Clear to close, baby. And
oh,
CTC,
man, it makes me happy just hearing it.
Clear to close. What that means is everything's cleared on your file, and all we're doing,
it's done.
It's almost done. And then we push to docs. And what that looks like is our closer, she works on getting docs out. She's amazing. She's a machine. I don't know. She pushed out 12 set of docs today on Monday.
Wow.
Which is a lot. Probably like 3 times as much as a normal funder does.
That's the easy part, though. That only takes a day or two.
Yeah,
so once you get clear to close, you're pretty much done. Wait for your papers to get to the title company, and you're signing.
Yep.
Perfect. And that's what happens behind the scenes in the 30 days.
And whatever. Yeah, even when you get clear to close.
That's why they need your paperwork.
Don't pull out a new credit card. Don't pull out a new truck loan, because we have a system up until the day of closing that pulls any new debt that the borrower has. So even when you've signed your loan documents, don't go apply for a new credit card, because we'll have to get documentation on that.
So,
and you're going to delay your closing date.
We'll wrap this up right now, but I want to know like your top or the 3 craziest things that you've seen blow up a deal with opening up credit accounts, or just give us a wild example of something that I think I've heard somebody say.
And the most earnest money you've ever seen lost because of it.
Yeah, let's leave them with a little bit of fear. So how much earnest money they lost and what it was that caused them to lose their financing close to closing.
I've only had one borrower ever lose earnest money.
Way to lay it on thick, buddy. No,
but I've seen pretty much.
How much was it?
It's like $3,000.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
And then
and that was their choice. They backed out last minute.
Okay, so it was a back out. But I think I heard somebody say one time like somebody got like a furniture account or tire account or something like that. And
I've had a client get a tire account. That sucked. And then we had a client that actually bought furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And
for their new house.
Yes. And how much did they need to close?
Didn't get the house though?
No, they got the house.
Okay.
It was like,
but it delayed it all again.
Yeah.
And they were $100,000 up in equity, and the builder is.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and they had like 30 cents in their account. How much did they like? And they only needed like $200.
That's crazy.
Damn.
It was like
either way.
Shit.
Don't fuck with your credit. Don't do
anything.
accounts.
Once you go under contract, Don't move money. Don't apply for new anything. Even if you don't get it, don't apply.
even take your kids to Dairy Queen.
And if you do absolutely have to do something,
Tell your loan officer.
talk to your
please.
loan officer. Let them know what's happening.
Hey, Hunter,
they
can I take
prep
my
you on
kids
what
out
it
to
is.
eat?
No.
Yes,
No.
you're not buying a house right now.
Yeah.
Thank God. All right, before we get out of here, last question.
Yes.
Also, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for
being
having me,
Thank you.
guys.
Yeah.
Can I come back?
here. Of course.
Yeah.
Good.
This
Yeah.
is actually really good.
The
Dude.
one reason why I'm asking you this next question is so you can come back.
Yes.
If you could fit it into like 60 seconds, 6 months goals, 6 month goals for you from today.
6 month goals. So that would put us at the beginning of next year. So long story short, I was able to open up my own branch with Heritage recently, which is
Congratulations.
thank you,
Congrats.
which is phenomenal.
Buy a house.
Buy a house.
Maybe no. Oh yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up really quick. So it's been super awesome. Love my team. Love my company. So I have right now 6 full-time loan officers, which is amazing, and they're absolutely crushing it. If you guys see them out there in the marketplace, please give them a shout out. And definitely, if they ask you to coffee, please go. You know, they're a lot of them are new in the industry, but they're extremely eager. They have a really good team behind them. At my company, I mean, just with my 3 owners, have almost 100 years experience behind us. So if you guys see some of my guys or gals out in the marketplace, just, you know, treat them good. Let them buy you a cup of coffee. That's all I would say.
Perfect.
But yeah, my 6 month goals are just to help you guys grow your team and push it into Idaho, because that's coming up here pretty soon.
Fast.
And then just push my loan officers to be as successful as they can.
Perfect.
Yep.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, with that being said, thank you everybody for watching, listening in. Thank you, Heritage Home Loans, Hunter,
Shout out